Hello, welcome to this short recording around unseen observation and its value for professional reflection and development of teachers. My name is Joanne Miles and I'm a trainer, a consultant and a coach working in the education sector. So first of all, what is the unseen observation cycle and how does it work? So on the screen, you can see the 7 stages of the unseen lesson observation cycle, sometimes also described by Professor Matt O'Leary as the collaborative self-observation cycle. This is really an opportunity for a teacher to think about their practice in more depth and detail with the support of a peer coach or an advanced practitioner to stimulate more thought and to encourage deeper thinking. There's a chance here for the teacher to really think about their planning process in stages 1 and 2, and really consider the rationale, the assumptions around planning, and the choices that they're making to deliver learning to the students in that particular group. So the conversations at that point may be around the choices for materials, the choices for classroom dynamics, the phasing and pacing of activities linked to the bigger learning objectives, if you like, on that module of the programme. It's an interesting and rich conversation between the peer coach or the advanced practitioner and the teacher, thinking about practicalities, thinking about options and choices, and really making those decisions before the lesson observation takes place. I think the most interesting and maybe the most radical stage of this cycle is stage 4, where we're suggesting that here the teacher is teaching the lesson, but there is nobody in the corner of the room. The teacher is there really thoughtfully delivering that learning that they've talked about and planned in detail with their colleague or the advanced practitioner from their institution. And they're really using that as an opportunity to think hard about that interaction with students and those choices that they made, and notice what effect it's had on the students and gather impact data also from the student in terms of feedback, samples of work, commentary through survey maybe. So this is really about the teacher at the centre of the process, really thinking about how they've structured, articulated, delivered that learning with students, and then reflecting on the effect of that with their class in subsequent conversation with their colleague or advanced practitioner or coach. So after the actual lesson in which nobody was present, but a lot of thinking was going on, the teacher is reflecting, thinking about what happened, things that they were pleased with, surprised by, parts of the lesson that maybe were thought-provoking, starting to have some thoughts about how they're going to follow up that session with the learners to really consolidate learning and to embed skills work more fully. After that piece of thinking, reflection, the teacher and the coach meet together in stage 6. This could be done through a phone call, it could be done through a Teams call, a Zoom call, it could be done face-to-face if that's possible. And there's a real professional dialogue happening there, getting the teacher to think about what was interesting from that lesson, what really struck them about the effect for the students of all those things that they'd planned, and really starting to think about changes they want to make in future to those activities and the next steps with the students. In stage 7, there's a more formalised, a more structured sense of writing up that experience. That could be a short audio recording, it might be a vlog, it might be a written piece of case study writing, or a learning journal entry maybe, helping the teacher to actually think about their own feed-forward action points. In some institutions in stage 7, these points are being added into teacher development plans or improvement plans that might be already in existence for that number of staff. For me, this is radically different from graded forms of observation and quite different from other forms of observation I'm seeing operating in schools and colleges. The fact that there's nobody in the room really enables the teacher to deliver that lesson freely with no sense of a pair of eyes watching and no sense of impending judgment and assessment, and really liberates that exploration of the approaches that they discussed with their peer or coach prior to actually delivering the session. The reflective space here that's created also, I think, is really fantastic for giving teachers time to really focus on a particular lesson and its fit into wider learning, to think about that planning process and those choices that are made, which I think is part of teachers' practice that can sometimes be neglected after initial teacher training programs. The opportunity to bounce all these ideas off a partner is also incredibly thought-provoking. I found that working with a peer on this and working with a coach on it in another institution, they asked questions that made me think really hard. They challenged my thinking by providing other options of how they might approach a situation and other activities and resources that they would use in that situation. That professional sharing really helped me to develop a slightly different type of session than the one I would have initially planned, and then allowed me to put more strategies and approaches into my toolkit as a result of going through this cycle. So for me, there are many professional learning and thinking benefits to this cycle, as well as the practical benefits of having a series of steps that we can follow to carry us through to identifying actions gradually over time in a thoughtful way. So on the screen for you now, just a fantastic graphic written by and designed by Martine Ellis from the Guernsey Institute a while ago when we ran a session, Professor Matt O'Leary and myself, around unseen observations. And we started to talk about some of the benefits that we're hearing from the wider sector. Interesting to note this focus here on reflection and trust, the feeling that's created with teachers using this cycle of talking to a colleague who they can work with safely, who isn't maybe in the hierarchy of their institution, who is another professional also wanting to develop their practice. And so that conversation has a lot of depth to it. It has a lot of capacity to be safe and trusting, therefore opening up these opportunities to explore different approaches and maybe try something out in an experimental way. Technology can also be part of the picture. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see some points around the virtual aspects of unseen observation. In some institutions, I'm seeing people use Teams to record part of these sessions so that the teacher can deliver the session, but record part of it and then reflect on that in further detail without necessarily even showing that to their coach, purely for having that reflective depth on their own. Using Zoom and Google Meet can similarly be really flexible in allowing people to actually reflect on something that they've recorded for their own practice as well from this cycle. I think over time, as we work through this cycle, there are real opportunities here to think about the threads and the patterns in our professional learning, noticing things about the way we interact with students, our language, our choices of pacing in sessions, the way that we might structure an activity into steps, the choice of resources that we would have. Because we're having these conversations and doing this thinking over a series of meetings and reflective opportunities, we have that chance to really find threads and patterns to work through. I think there's real value in that. Lots of CPD that I'm aware of is really one-hit wonder experiences that are not followed up over time. So for me, one of the huge benefits of the unseen observation cycle is this follow through into a series of pieces of thinking, reflection and discussion to allow us to really focus in more depth on the things that are emerging from our teaching and learning. Finally, just a little bit of further reading for people if they're interested in thinking about unseen observation, lesson observation as a model to use in their institution. A couple of articles by Professor Matt O'Leary and then a few blog entries from my blog site thinking about the benefits and how people are using it in different ways. I would say that in the FE sector where I do the majority of my work, I'm seeing unseen observation coming in as an alternative to graded observation cycles. I'm seeing it brought in as an option on professional development menus, and I'm seeing it experimented with by coaching teams as part of their advanced practitioner model, if you like, for developing staff in their institution. Sometimes I'm hearing about curriculum teams exploring this practice as a team where they pair up to work on this cycle together to think about actually curriculum specific delivery in their subject area and really reflect on how they're delivering particular themes, topics, skills within that subject area to their learners, using unseen observation as their vehicle. So for me, this is a really exciting, valuable, beneficial tool to think about. And I hope that it'll be something that you may be exploring your context informally or in a more structured model, depending what your situation is. If you're looking for support in planning or implementing this or building any of the skills around reflection or coaching, I hope you'll get in touch. And my email is on the first slide of this deck. Thank you.